Chapter 847. Of course, Lu Yi couldn't possibly feed them until they were full. With the two flood dragons' enormous bodies, it would cost an enormous amount of merit points to feed them. This was only his first try. He might have to come here more often in the future. Lu Yi could afford to spend 10 or 20,000 merit points each time, but he couldn't afford to spend too much. Kid, not bad. The golden flood dragon opened its mouth, its tone slightly friendlier. It was a perfect example of what it meant to eat from others. Next time, remember to bring more. That bit of flesh isn't enough to fill my stomach, the silver flood dragon warned. Junior will remember, Lu Yi replied. The golden flood dragon said, I've already explained the rules of the War Merit Pavilion to you last time. Do you still remember? Lu Yi nodded. Everything in the War Merit Pavilion can only be used for personal use. Everything related to the War Merit Pavilion cannot be revealed to anyone. It's good that you remember. The golden flood dragon retracted its body as it spoke. Go in. The two dragons coiled around each other, quickly forming a concentric circle. The door of the War Merit Pavilion opened with a kacha sound. Lu Yi stepped inside. Many stone platforms immediately came into view, and each of them had a treasure that was rarely seen in the outside world. The last time he came here, he didn't have much time. Because he had borrowed the Heavenly Secret Pillar from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, there were many people lining up behind him. Ma Guanhua looked around, but didn't investigate everything. This time, he was in his own spiritual land, so he wasn't in such a hurry. It was a good opportunity to investigate. Lu Yi skipped over the places he had investigated last time and headed deeper into the War Merit Pavilion. As he walked, his heart pounded. Every item here was extremely precious and rare. They couldn't be easily found in the Heavenly Secret Treasury. Take the Supplement Aperture Pill for example. The Supplement Aperture Pills in the Heavenly Secret Treasury were almost sold out, but they could still be bought here. There were many strange treasures with different effects, but there were also many high-quality magic tools. The magic tools that could be placed here were all the best of the best. Lu Yi even saw a top-quality magic tool long saber. With his current status, he could naturally afford it. However, Lu Yi only glanced at it. He was satisfied with the mountain plate saber. Even if the quality of the mountain plate saber wasn't as good as the mountain plate saber, the one that suited him was the best. As Lu Yi walked further in, he was surprised to find that the stone platforms here were all shrouded in a hazy white light, making it impossible for him to see what was inside. Naturally, he couldn't tell what was on the stone platforms. After pondering for a moment, Lu Yi suspected that it was because his cultivation was not high enough that he could not see the true appearance of the treasures on the stone platforms. From the looks of it, if he wanted to see more good things, he would have to work hard to raise his cultivation. After roughly browsing through all the treasures he could see, Lu Yi quickly walked up to a stone platform and raised his hand to grab the treasure on the platform. Although he had obtained the treasure, there were no signs of his battle achievements being deducted. It was an additional reward for this trip to the Wuxia continent. The moment Lu Yi returned to the Cloudy River battlefield through the portal, he received the guidance of Heaven's will. He had the right to choose any treasure from the War Merit Pavilion. Since he could choose at will, he naturally didn't care about the value. He could take whatever he wanted. This additional reward should be Heaven's will commend him for his actions in the Wuxia continent. Of the 4 pillars of Heaven's will, other than the one that was given to Wuxia to place in Mount Meru, the others were all placed by Lu Yi himself. Not to mention finding the location of the secret realms and finding ways to enter the secret realms, it was troublesome. Moreover, before Heaven's will of the 9 prefectures established a connection with the Wuxia continent, Lu Yi had also killed many members of the Corpse clan. These were not included in his battle achievements. Heaven's will of course wouldn't ignore all the hard work he had put in. Therefore, Lu Yi obtained the right to choose any treasure from the War Merit Pavilion. As for whether the others had similar additional rewards, Lu Yi didn't know. Even if there were, it should only be an additional amount of battle achievements. It wouldn't be like him. With this additional reward in hand, Lu Yi felt a great sense of security. Only then did he step in front of the stone platform where the golden spirit lots were placed. He exchanged for 10 golden spirit lots. Including the 20 golden spirit lots that he originally had, He now had a total of 30 golden spirit lots. With such wealth, it wouldn't be a problem to say that he was the #1 in Cloud River. Even those in the true lake stage might not be able to obtain so many golden spirit lots at once. Advancing to the true lake stage was settled. As a result, he was only left with 4,672 battle achievements. He didn't use them all mainly because he wanted to keep some for himself. Who knows, he might need them in the future. After receiving the rewards and exchanging for the items, Lu Yi walked out of the War Merit Pavilion. Under the gaze of the 2 water dragons, his figure quickly faded. He could faintly hear the silver water dragon asking him to come earlier next time. Returning to his wooden house, Lu Yi first urged the power of the talent tree to swallow the strange fire and pill fire that he had bought this time. Seeing that the color of the leaves had become brighter, but there were still no signs of them being ignited, he couldn't help but feel disappointed. Lu Yi was still looking forward to this new spirit rune that had yet to appear. However, the spirit runes on the talent tree had to be ignited before they could be checked. Right now, the state of the tree was neither up nor down, which made him feel very uncomfortable. Although Lu Yi still had some earth core fire in reserve, it was for emergency use. If one day the talent tree didn't have enough fuel, or if he was in a bad situation, these earth core fire would come in handy. Moreover, even if he swallowed the earth core fire, he wouldn't be able to completely ignite the leaves. He could only leave it for the future. Cultivate, cultivate. Lu Yi calmed himself down and shouted. He took out all 30 golden spirit lots and placed them in front of him. So many! He exclaimed. The golden radiance was so bright that she couldn't open her eyes. As usual, Lu Yi constructed a small spirit gathering funnel on his body. Only then did he pick up a golden spirit lot and crush it. The golden powder swirled and turned into a vortex. From this vortex, a large amount of pure spirit energy immediately poured out and wrapped around the place where Lu Yi was. This spiritual energy seemed to be inexhaustible, but it didn't dissipate at all, instead condensing within a meter of Lu Ye's body. Under the guidance of the small funnel, this spiritual energy was quickly devoured and transformed into Lu Ye's most powerful asset. Lu Yi sat down cross-legged and immersed himself in studying the broken source of Dragon Soaring Realm. He didn't believe that he couldn't imprint a master who cultivated the saber technique. A golden spirit lot could last for almost a day and night. When the efficacy of the spirit lot was exhausted and the golden vortex disappeared, Yi would take out another one and crush it. Lu Yi had the small spirit gathering funnel to assist him in his cultivation, so he didn't need to worry about anything at all. He could just focus on his own matters. Time passed by, and the golden spirit lots were constantly consumed. Until one day, when Lu Yi opened his eyes again, he found that he had broken through to the Cloud River Realm 9th Order at some point. And the golden spirit lot in front of him only seemed to have consumed a dozen or so. Compared to other cultivators, Lu Yi had a great advantage by cultivating with the help of spirit lots. This was because the duration of using spirit lots was fixed, almost a day and night. Among cultivators of the same level, no one could obtain as many benefits as Lu Yi. The small spirit gathering funnels continuously swallowed the pure spirit energy gushing out of the golden vortex. The effect of a single funnel wasn't too obvious, but every time Lu Yi constructed a small funnel on his body, the effect was extremely terrifying. This was also the biggest reason why his strength had been able to advance by leaps and bounds in the Cloud River tier. The same golden spiritual lot, in comparison, had brought him 2 times, 3 times, or even more benefits than other cultivators. Even if Yi and Hupo were cultivating beside him, they wouldn't get a share of what he deserved. The Cloud River Realm 9th Order was only one step away from the true Lake Realm. Lu Ye's mood was calm. He only checked a little, and after confirming that there were no hidden dangers in his breakthrough, he continued. Lu Yi had already confirmed this, so when he realized that something might have happened in the outside world, he immediately pulled his mind back and opened his eyes. Beside him, he had also stopped cultivating and was looking around with a stunned expression. Lu Yi turned his head and couldn't help but frown, because what he saw was extremely bizarre. This was his wooden house, and the furnishings were extremely simple, but now, the scenery in the house seemed to overlap with another blurry scene. The blurry scene was constantly changing, making it impossible to see clearly. At first glance, it was as if another space-time had overlapped with the space-time he was in. Not only that, Lu Yi could clearly feel a repulsive force enveloping him. This repulsive force was very familiar. He had felt it when he broke through to the Cloud River realm in the Spirit Stream battlefield, and after he broke through to the Cloud River realm, the repulsive force also expanded to the limit, directly sending him out of the Spirit Stream battlefield. Therefore, when he sensed this familiar repulsive force permeating the soaring dragon realm source, the number of Spirit Stream fragments continued to decrease. Lu Yi would wake up every 2 or 3 days, so he didn't have to worry about suddenly breaking through to the true lake realm and leaving the Cloud River battlefield. He was prepared to stop cultivating when he was 1 step away from the true lake realm. The expansion of the Spirit Land should have been completed. Although the many spirit arrays he had arranged before covered a large area, as the Spirit Land expanded, some changes would need to be made. Before leaving the Cloud River battlefield, these things had to be completed. But man proposes, God disposes. Lu Yi didn't expect that his plan would be so perfect, but there would be so many problems. After returning to the Spirit Land for a full month, while he was imprinting the Soaring Dragon Realm source and cultivating with a certain master in the Soaring Dragon Realm, his mind suddenly received a huge shock. He immediately reacted. Something had happened in the outside world. The process of imprinting the source could be interrupted at any time, so Lu Ye's first reaction was that he was about to break through to the true lake realm, but after careful examination, he clearly wasn't. Although he wasn't far from the true lake realm, it wasn't time for him to break through yet. And what was this blurry scene that seemed to overlap with space-time? Chapter 848. There was some movement outside. Li Baxian and the others should have been alarmed. Lu Yi hurriedly got up and pushed the door open. He saw Li Baxian and the others looking up at the sky with shocked expressions. Following their gazes, Lu Yi couldn't help but stare blankly. The scene in the sky was even more bizarre than the scene in the wooden house. As far as the eye could see, a huge floating continent stretched across the void. The floating continent should still be very far from the ground, but it already covered the sky and earth. Even the scorching sun in the sky was completely blocked, casting a huge shadow over the entire Cloud River battlefield. At this moment, almost everyone in the Cloud River battlefield could see the vastness of the floating continent as long as they raised their heads. The floating continent didn't look complete, as if it was a part of an even more magnificent land. What was even more frightening was that the floating continent was slowly but steadily pressing down on the Cloud River battlefield. The phenomenon of overlapping space-time was caused by this. It was hard to imagine how such a huge floating continent could lie in the void. What was even harder to imagine was what kind of disaster it would cause if it landed on the Cloud River battlefield. Fourth senior brother, what's going on? Lu Yi asked. I'm not sure. Li Baxian shook his head. He didn't see as much as Lu Yi. He was also cultivating when he sensed something strange and came out to investigate. Regardless, we shouldn't stay in this dangerous place for long. Junior brother, let's return to the 9 provinces first. Li Baxian turned to look at Lu Yi. Lu Yi felt the increasingly obvious repulsive force around him and nodded. We have to return to the 9 provinces. The repulsive force was clearly the work of the 9 provinces. Not only him, but all the cultivators on the Cloud River battlefield would be repelled. Therefore, even if someone wanted to stay and see what was going on, they wouldn't be able to do so. The shocking change made the wolves in Huitian Valley restless. Lu Yi and the others could return to the 9 provinces to hide, but the wolves couldn't leave the Cloud River battlefield. They were born on the Cloud River battlefield and most of them would die of old age there. Unless they were favored by a cultivator and became a pet beast, they could enter and leave the Cloud River battlefield with the cultivator. If there were only 1 or 2 demon wolves, Lu Yi and the others could still bring them back to the 9 regions, but now there were more than 300 wolves gathered in the spiritual land. With such a huge number, it was impossible to bring them back. As a natural barrier for the spiritual land, these demon wolves would play an irreplaceable role in protecting the spiritual land. Li Baxian seemed to have noticed the worry in Lu Ye's heart and said, We can't do anything about them. Moreover, I have a feeling that this isn't a natural disaster. The workings of the heavens should be able to deal with it. Lu Yi nodded. If such a situation was really a natural disaster, then other than the cultivators who could return to the 9 provinces, there would be no more living creatures in the entire Cloud River battlefield. Even the cities would be turned into nothing. While the two of them were talking, the invisible repulsive force around them suddenly became much stronger. Lu Ye's vision began to spin, and he realized that he had been expelled from the Cloud River battlefield. When he came back to his senses, he had already appeared in the Tianji Hall of the 9 regions' main sect. 2 figures suddenly appeared beside him. One was Giant Armor, and the other was Hua Ci, who he had just parted with not long ago. Cultivators who had been expelled from the Cloud River battlefield would all appear in the Tianji Hall of their own sect. Hua Ci was eating something at this moment, and her cheeks were bulging. She was at a loss when she suddenly returned to the 9 provinces. She hurriedly swallowed the food in her mouth and asked blankly, "Lu Yi, what happened?" "I'm not sure. Why are all of you back?" Shui Yuan's voice rang out. She had sensed the auras of Lu Yi and the others, and had come to investigate. Ever since they had advanced to the Cloud River tier and entered the Cloud River battlefield, only Lu Yi had returned twice. Hua Ci and Giant Armor had remained in the Cloud River battlefield. Now that the 3 of them had appeared together, Shui Yuan was naturally surprised. "Second senior sister." The 3 of them bowed. "Something happened at the Cloud River battlefield," Lu Yi explained. He recounted the abnormality from before in detail. "Second senior sister, do you know what that floating continent is? Why were we expelled from the Cloud River battlefield?" Shui Yuan was surprised. There was such a thing? She suddenly thought of something. "Now that you mention it, I seem to have heard the old man mention something similar before. However, he mentioned it casually back then, so I didn't ask much. Why don't we ask the old man? He's old, so he should know something." Lu Yi nodded. "I'll go pay a visit to the sect master now." "There's no hurry." Shui Yuan smiled slightly. "The old man has guests over there. Let's wait for a while." Lu Yi immediately felt guilty. Could it be that the sect master went to rob some other sect's disciples again? After tasting the sweetness of it once, the sect master had done such things many times in recent years. Now, all the major sects in the War Province would shake their heads at the mention of the Jade Blood sect's Tang Yifeng. The sect master's image of virtue and prestige, which he had painstakingly cultivated for many years, had long collapsed in the cultivation world of the War Province. Now, when Tang Yifeng was mentioned, he could already be associated with the word bandit. Ordinary bandits robbed for wealth, but Tang Yifeng robbed people. As a result, the major cultivation sects in the War Province had to secretly recruit disciples, and no longer dared to make a big fuss about it. The sect master's evil claws even extended to several provinces adjacent to the War Province. The sect master had paid so much in exchange for the prosperity of the Jade Blood sect in the Spirit Stream realm, and top-notch geniuses could be found everywhere. Shui Yuan laughed. Ever since Madame Yun took him as a strong man, the old man has no time to go out. "That's good." Lu Yi let out a long breath. When she turned her head, she saw Giant Armor's hand on the Tianji pillar, frowning. He probably wanted to see if he could enter the Cloud River battlefield. Something had happened there, but the wolf pack remained in the spiritual land, which made him quite worried. Fourth senior brother said that it shouldn't be a natural disaster. "Don't worry too much." Lu Yi comforted him. Giant Armor nodded sullenly and didn't say anything. The old man should be done talking. "Let's go." Shui Yuan's expression changed as she sensed something. She was now a divine ocean realm cultivator, so her perception was naturally much sharper than Lu Yi and the others. Shui Yuan walked out of the Tianji Hall and rushed to the conference hall, where she waited outside. The sect master's voice came from inside. "Young friend, you should think it over carefully. Our Jade Blood sect is alone in the Force province. In fact, it's not suitable for your sect to rely on. If you're interested, I can recommend a few top sections. I don't dare to promise you anything else, but I'll give you some face." Another person's voice sounded. "I've thought it through. After coming to the Nine province, I went straight to you. Other sects may be stronger than your sect, but our sect only recognizes one person and only your sect. I didn't hide anything from you before. You should understand the whole story. The two of them seemed to have finished their discussion and were walking towards the exit. Since that's the case, choose an auspicious day and announce it to the War Province. Thank you, Sect Master Tang. Outside the hall, Lu Ye's expression suddenly became very strange because the voice coming from inside the hall sounded a little familiar. Wuxia, who was standing beside him, also showed a surprised look. She poked Lu Ye's waist with her finger and whispered, "Did I hear it wrong?" "I think so, too." Shui Yuan looked confused. "What are you talking about?" Before Lu Yi could answer, the sect leader had already stepped out of the hall. Looking at him, the sect leader had the demeanor of a transcendent being. It was very easy for strangers to have a good impression of him. When Lu Yi first met the sect leader, he felt that this old man was a trustworthy person, so he asked him for help. There was another person beside the sect master. Valiant and formidable, a woman dressed as a man. She did not lose the softness of a woman, but also the strength of a man. The combination of contradictions added a strange temperament. She looked up and met Lu Ye's eyes full of astonishment. She smiled slightly. "Senior brother Lu, we meet again." Hua Xi's long eyelashes blinked. She couldn't believe her eyes, and she couldn't believe that she would see this person here. Lu Yi was also so shocked that he forgot to say hello to her for a moment. "What? Senior brother, are you surprised to see me?" How could he not be surprised? Why is Palace Master Pang here? Lu Yi was puzzled. Previously, he thought that the Peerless Continent would become a mystery realm of the 9 states, where Cloud River tier cultivators could enter to gain experience. Therefore, he never thought that Pang Huanin would appear in the 9 states, and even come to the Jade Blood sect. However, thinking about it carefully, the Peerless Continent already had a Heaven Mystery Pillar, and the Heaven Mystery Realm of the 9 states had established a connection with the Peerless Continent. Since the cultivators of the 9 states could go to the Peerless Continent, then the people of the Peerless Continent should also be able to come to the 9 states. From now on, the Peerless Continent no longer exists, and we are also people of the 9 states, Pang Huanin explained with a smile. Obviously, she was in a good mood after seeing Lu Ye's appearance. "What do you mean?" Lu Ye was confused. "How should I put it?" Pang Huanin pondered for a moment before saying, "After you left, I received guidance from the Heaven Mystery Realm of the 9 states, and it asked me if I was willing to let the Peerless Continent merge with the 9 states. Of course, I was willing. Then, I made some efforts, and the entire Peerless Continent migrated to the 9 states. This journey was very magical. If senior brother wants to hear it, I'll tell you later." Migrated? Lu Yi felt like he was listening to a heavenly book. It was a fragment of a broken continent, and there were no people there. How could it migrate? However, he soon realized something. The huge floating continent above the Cloud River battlefield is the Peerless Continent? Hua Xi suddenly came to her senses. If that was the case, then it made sense. The guidance from the Heaven Mystery Realm said that because the origin of the Peerless Continent is incomplete, it is not qualified to merge with the 9 states. It can only merge with the Cloud River battlefield. Once the merger is complete, any cultivator on the Cloud River battlefield can go to the Peerless Continent at will. As for how the merger will take place, I don't know. Moreover, she appeared directly in the Jade Blood sect's Heaven Mystery Hall. Clearly, the Heaven Mystery Realm had made things convenient for her. Otherwise, how could she, a person from the Peerless Continent, find the Jade Blood sect so quickly? Chapter 849. When Pang Huanin suddenly appeared in the Heaven's secret hall of the Jade Blood sect, Shui Yuan thought that an enemy had invaded. Fortunately, Pang Huanin's cultivation level was not high, so she was immediately taken down. Realm fusion. The sect master, who had been silent all this time, suddenly spoke. Lu Yi hurriedly bowed and asked humbly, "Sect master, so the floating continent that suddenly appeared in the sky above the Cloud River battlefield is really the Wushuang continent?" It was indeed a bit surreal. The Wushuang continent had been eradicated by the cultivators of the 9 states. In just a month, the Wushuang continent had moved to the Cloud River battlefield. This was definitely the work of Heaven's secret. It was definitely not as simple as Pang Huanin said. As for what method Heaven's secret used to move such a huge realm fragment to the Cloud River battlefield, it was not something that Lu Yi could figure out. Even Pang Huanin might not know. The sect master stroked his beard. It should be right. My master has experienced something like this before. Lu Yi did not know how old the sect master was now. As for his master, he was an even older figure. It is said that the Cloud River battlefield was not that big in the beginning. It gradually expanded by merging various broken or ruined realms, including the Spirit Stream battlefield. Lu Yi still had a vague idea of how big the Cloud River battlefield was. Compared to the Wushuang continent, it was definitely more than 100 times bigger. He had also wondered how such a huge battlefield was born, but he did not delve into it. He used to think that it was formed by Heaven's secret splitting a part of the 9 states. But now, it seemed that was not the case. The birth and expansion of the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield were closely related to broken realms like the Wushuang continent. The fusion of realms is not an easy matter, and it is not a simple matter of territorial expansion. The entire process may take a very long time. During this period of time, it is not suitable for Cloud River tier cultivators like you to remain in the Cloud River battlefield. This is also the reason why you were expelled from the battlefield. Lu Yi suddenly understood. What about the monsters born in the Cloud River battlefield? The giant armor immediately pricked up its ears and listened attentively with a nervous expression. The sect master said, during the fusion process, the spiritual power of heaven and earth will surge. It is not suitable for cultivators to stay, mainly because it will hinder their cultivation. In fact, there is no danger to their lives, so the monsters born in the Cloud River battlefield will not be affected too much. At most, they will be frightened. Hearing the sect master's words, the nervous giant armor finally relaxed. In other words, he wouldn't be able to enter the Cloudy River battlefield for the time being. Lu Yi asked, "That's right. If it's short, it'll take 10 days to half a month. If it's long, it'll take several months before it stabilizes." Lu Yi took the lead. He was now a 9th Order Cloud River realm cultivator and had a lot of golden spirit sticks in his possession. Whether he cultivated in the Cloud River battlefield or in the 9 provinces, there was no difference. The only pity was that he didn't have the time to rearrange the formation in the spiritual land. The expansion of the spiritual land had already ended. From a small spiritual land that could only accommodate a few people, it had jumped to a large spiritual land that could accommodate 100 people. Naturally, some changes had to be made to the array that had been set up previously. He had initially planned to wait until he had cultivated to the peak stage of the Cloud River tier and was prepared to leave the Cloud River battlefield before dealing with these matters. Who would have thought that such an unforeseen event would occur? Even Pang Huanin, the master of Ziwei Dao Palace, had appeared in the Jade Blood sect. "Young friend Pang, since you're familiar with Ia, let him guide you to investigate. Ao Mountain is vast and has many spiritual peaks. It won't be a problem to accommodate your Dao Palace. The sect master has spoken." "Thank you, sect master Tang." Pang Huanin bowed and turned to look at Lu Yi. She playfully blinked her left eye and said, "Thank you, senior brother." Lu Yi was puzzled. "What are you going to do?" The sect master said, "Young friend Pang wants to establish a sect in the 9 provinces, but you know the situation on her side, yeah. I heard that you went to the Peerless continent to help them solve the problem. They have no foundation in the 9 provinces, so they want to join our sect as a superior sect. This old master has already agreed to this. Take her to find some spiritual peaks and use them as the foundation for the establishment of the sect. Consider it a congratulatory gift from our Jade Blood sect." Only then did Lu Yi understand the purpose of Pang Huanin's visit. The so-called superior sect and inferior sect were not rare in the 9 provinces. Many newly established sects would choose the nearby powerful sects to attach themselves to. This way, they could gain the support of the superior sect to a certain extent. When the disciples went out, they could also get help from the superior sect's cultivators, so they wouldn't have to fight alone. The relationship between the superior sect and superior sect was somewhat similar to that of a subordinate sect. The most recent superior sect that was related to the Jade Blood sect was the Pill Heart sect. However, the superior sect used to be powerful, but now it was the other way around. The Pill Heart sect was second grade, while the Jade Blood sect was desolate. The Peerless Continent was moved to the Cloud River battlefield by some strange means by Tianji. In the future, the Peerless Continent would no longer exist. It would only become a part of the Cloud River battlefield. The cultivators of the Peerless Continent naturally couldn't stay there forever. In the past, they were limited by the world and could only cultivate to the peak of the Cloud River realm. They couldn't pry into the mysteries of the next realm. However, for any cultivator, a higher realm was an irresistible temptation. Therefore, the cultivators of the Peerless Continent had to leave the Cloud River battlefield and come to the 9 provinces. After the previous battle, the number of people of the Ziwei Taoist Palace didn't decrease. Instead, it increased, mainly because they absorbed a large number of cultivators from the strongholds who came to support them. Since these people came, they were the cultivators of the 9 provinces and needed a place to settle down. Therefore, Pang Huanin had to establish a sect in the 9 provinces and rebuild the Ziwei Taoist Palace. Unless she was willing to disband the Taoist Palace and let the cultivators find their own way out. During the migration, Pang Huanin learned a lot about the 9 provinces from Tianji and made the decision to rebuild the Ziwei Taoist Palace. Therefore, she immediately took the first step and went directly to the Jade Blood sect with the help of Tianji. Originally, the sect leader didn't like this kind of thing. After all, he had learned a lesson from the Pill Heart sect. However, after listening to Pang Huanin's detailed explanation, the sect leader changed his mind. With his eyesight, how could he not see that Pang Huanin was a genius? In a broken world like the Peerless Continent, her achievements in the Cloud River realm were not inferior to Feng Ruli and the others. If she was really born in the 9 provinces, her foundation must be stronger. Moreover, as someone who had experienced it, the sect leader also felt that this woman seemed to have a good impression of Lu Yi. In addition, the Jade Blood sect's middle level was low. If they wanted to develop in the future, they would have to consider more. If they accepted the Ziwei Taoist Palace as a subordinate sect, this shortcoming could be fixed in an instant. They didn't have to wait for their disciples to grow slowly. On the other hand, the Ziwei Taoist Palace lacked top powerhouses, so the 2 sects could complement each other. However, the sect leader was an upright person. As a Divine Sea Realm cultivator, he didn't hide anything from Pang Huanin. During the conversation, he told Pang Huanin the current situation of the Jade Blood sect in detail. He even persuaded Pang Huanin to choose another sect as her superior sect. He was even willing to be the go-between. Pang Huanin naturally refused. As she had said before, she came to the 9 provinces this time only for the Jade Blood sect. She didn't care about anything else. In this way, the matter of accepting the Jade Blood sect as their superior sect after the Ziwei Taoist Palace was established was finalized. Since he wanted to establish a sect, he had to choose a piece of land as the foundation of the sect. The military province was vast, so there were many places suitable for establishing a sect. However, the sect leader obviously wanted to give a part of Ao Mountain to the Ziwei Taoist Palace as their foundation in the 9 provinces. This was understandable. Ao Mountain was very big. Even the Jade Blood sect in its heyday couldn't make the best use of it. It was not a problem to accommodate 2 sections. Lu Yi was stunned. In this short period of time, many strange things had happened one after another. Even with his temperament, he was still shocked. Senior Marshal Brother? Pang Huanin saw that Lu Yi was in a daze and called out softly. Lu Yi nodded. Come with me. After saying that, he soared into the sky and flew in a random direction. Pang Huanin smiled slightly and followed him. Shuiyuan looked at the direction in which the 2 left and thought for a while. Then she turned to look at Hua Ci. Junior Marshal Sister, you don't want to follow them? Hua Ci smiled gently. Why should I follow them? Shuiyuan said earnestly, Junior Marshal Sister, you must act early. If you are late, it will be too late. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. Senior Marshal Sister, I happen to be free recently. I have some questions about medical skills that I want to ask you. Hua Xi interrupted Shui Yuan's words and went forward to hold her arm. This was not a lie. In fact, Hua Xi had wanted to ask Shui Yuan about medical skills a long time ago. However, she had been cultivating intensely and didn't have the opportunity. This time, there was a problem in the Cloud River battlefield. All the cultivators were temporarily unable to enter it. This was a heaven-sent opportunity. Although the inheritance she received also had some medical skills, the most important one was still poison. However, she had never forgotten that she was a medical cultivator. There was also a person who was often injured and needed her care. The two women left, leaving the sect leader and Zhu Jia staring at each other. The sect leader was actually very optimistic about this burly disciple. This was because he had long seen Zhu Jia's talent. However, Zhu Jia's personality was dull. In addition, he had only stayed in the Jade Blood sect for a few days. Therefore, the sect leader knew almost nothing about Zhu Jia. He was going to ask Zhu Jia if he had any difficulties in cultivation. The world only knew that Tang Yifeng of the Jade Blood sect was a powerful Dharma cultivator. However, very few people knew that he cultivated both Dharma and body. It was naturally not a problem for him to guide a junior who was also a body cultivator. Unexpectedly, before he could say anything, Giant Armor bowed to him and walked away without saying a word. The sect leader's expression was melancholic. To think that he, the sect leader of the Jade Blood sect, was once a person who could summon the wind and summon the rain. However, today, he didn't even have the opportunity to guide his disciples. How could he be so miserable? A voice suddenly sounded by his ear. Old fart, why aren't you coming over? The sect leader quivered and hurriedly rushed towards Ming Xinfeng. At the same time, he hurriedly responded, I'm coming, I'm coming. Chapter 850. The land of the 9 prefectures is a little different from what I imagined. Pang Huanin suddenly spoke as they continued to fly at a leisurely pace. Lu Yi casually asked, what does 9 regions look like in Palace Master's mind? I call you Senior Brother, but Senior Brother calls me Palace Lord. It's a little distant. Pang Huanin did not answer Lu Ye's question. Instead, she cared about something else. Senior Brother, how should I address Junior Sister Hua? That's my real name, Lu Yi answered honestly. Senior Brother, why don't you try calling me that? Pang Huanin? The word Pang can be removed. Junior Sister. Pang Huanin chuckled and shook her head. She didn't want to dwell on these details any longer. Just do as you wish, Senior Brother. After pondering for a moment, he said, previously, when I saw the amazing demeanor of Senior Brother and the others, I thought that the land of the 9 continents was vast and abundant in resources. However, when I really came here, I found that it was somewhat different. Are you disappointed? How is that possible? Pang Huanin said, compared to the environment we used to live in, the land of the 9 prefectures is a place we have always dreamed of. Now that we are here, we are overjoyed. How can we be disappointed? The ancestors of the Holy Ji Palace have sacrificed generation after generation in order to ensure that the undead race would not be troubled by the undead race and have a stable environment to live in. Now that this has been achieved, we have gained even more. After pausing for a moment, she continued, I have some understanding of the vast land and abundant resources of the 9 prefectures. Although I haven't been to other places, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth doesn't seem to be rich. How could Senior Marshal Brother have such a cultivation base at such a young age? This was what puzzled Pang Huanin the most. Based on her perception, the heaven and earth spirit chi in the 9 states was not even comparable to the original Ziwei Taoist palace. It was only slightly better than the Wushuang continent. Logically speaking, it was impossible for such an environment to give birth to a powerful cultivator. But in reality, there was a true lake above the Cloud River, as well as a divine sea. Just the 2 divine sea cultivators of the Jade Blood sect gave her an unfathomable feeling. Previously, when she suddenly appeared in the divine secret hall, Shui Yuan arrived in an instant. Just a glance was enough to immobilize her. The spiritual energy of heaven and earth in 9 regions is indeed not rich. However, the Spirit Stream tier cultivators had their own Spirit Stream battlefield, and the Cloud River tier cultivators had their own Cloud River battlefield. The spiritual chi of heaven and earth in these 2 places was still very rich, and it was not something that the 9 states could compare with. Moreover, there are many methods to increase the concentration of heaven and earth spirit chi in these 2 places. On the Spirit Stream battlefield, the various garrisons had the support of the Heaven's Fate Pillars. On the Cloud River battlefield, there were spirit lands. Both of these could be considered methods to increase the density of spirit chi. But Pang Huanin was even more confused. I don't know either. I believe Heavenly Fate is encouraging the cultivators at these 2 levels to enter the battlefield to hone themselves. It was precisely because the spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the 9 states wasn't very rich that the majority of Spirit Stream tier cultivators would stay on the Spirit Stream tier battlefield, while the majority of Cloud River tier cultivators would stay on the Cloud River tier battlefield. In this way, the cultivators of the 2 major camps would constantly clash against each other, becoming each other's whetstones. Lu Yi had thought about these things before, so she was able to answer Pang Huanin's question with ease. In the future, when the Palace Lord establishes a sect in the 9 states, the Ziwei Dao Palace will have its own base in the Spirit Stream battlefield. At that time, the Palace Lord will be able to see the situation clearly. Pang Huanin looked pensive. She no longer corrected Lu Yi for calling her palace master. Since it was his habit to shout, he would just let him shout. Suddenly she smiled. No matter what, we are finally in the 9 states. She was once curious about what kind of magical realm the 9 states was that it could cultivate a group of dragons and phoenixes like Lu Yi. The more she interacted with Lu Yi and the others, the more she yearned for the 9 states. Therefore, when she received the guidance of the 9 states' heavenly fate and had the opportunity to come here, Pang Huanin agreed without hesitation. Because she knew that this was the only way out for the Wushuang continent. Although the zombie disaster on the Wushuang continent had been resolved, the cultivation environment of the entire world was much worse than before. In the past, there were still a few secret realms of the human race. Now, the earth veins in the secret realms had dried up. The situation would only get worse. Integrating the Wushuang continent into the 9 states would not only satisfy her own wish, but also find a way out for the Wushuang continent. When did the Palace Lord receive the guidance of heavenly fate? Lu Yi was curious. Pang Huanin smiled slyly. Actually, when the reinforcements of the 9 states arrived at the Wushuang continent, I already had a feeling. However, I hadn't made a decision at that time. When I sent senior brother away, I made a decision. From the perspective of the person involved, Pang Huanin was extremely envious of the cultivators of the 9 states because they had the support of an entire realm. Pang Huanin and the Wushuang continent had never experienced the feeling of being able to rely on an entire realm and be protected by it. Since you've decided to join the Jade Blood sect, you must have some understanding of the situation in the 9 states. The 9 states is not a safe place. I understand. I know that the Haotian Alliance and the Myriad Demon Ridge are fighting against each other. Since you're on the Jade Blood sect's side, you're on the Haotian Alliance's side. In the future, the cultivators of the Dao Palace will have to fight against the people of the Myriad Demon Ridge. Where there are people, there will be fights. The cultivators of the Dao Palace have experienced the darkest times, so they don't lack the courage and determination to fight. I believe that they can lay a foundation in the 9 states. Since the Palace Lord has such awareness, that's enough. Lu Yi nodded. What about the other 2 secret realms? Pang Huanin shook her head. I don't know what they will decide, and I don't want to care about them. However, the situation of the 2 secret realms is different from that of the Dao Palace. The inheritance of the Dao Palace has never been cut off, so I have the idea of establishing a sect in the 9 states. The inheritance of the 2 secret realms has long been fragmented, and the major and minor families have the power. What they decide to do in the future has nothing to do with the Dao Palace. However, they will probably find their own way out. If we meet again in the future, we can help each other if we're on the same side, but if we're enemies, the Tao Palace will not show mercy. While talking, the two of them flew while admiring the beautiful mountains and rivers. Such a large mountain range is the territory of the Ao Mountain? Pang Huanin was amazed. The Jade Blood sect didn't seem to have many people, but it occupied such a large area, which was really admirable. She thought that she had a basic understanding of the 9 states, but when she saw it with her own eyes, she realized that she was too narrow-minded. Should be, right? Lu Yi looked a little embarrassed. Should be? Pang Huanin was puzzled. Lu Yi touched her nose. To tell you the truth, this is the first time I've left the sect. Pang Huanin looked at Lu Yi in surprise, and then she was overjoyed. Lu Yi explained, when I was taken in as a disciple by the sect master, I was ambushed on my way back to the sect. In order to avoid the aftermath of the battle, the sect master sent me to the Spirit Stream battlefield. I spent almost the entire Spirit Stream realm in the Spirit Stream battlefield, and when I returned to the sect, I didn't go more than 30 miles away from the main peak. It was the same when I was in the Cloud River realm. So, I don't know much more about the 9 states than you do. I see. Pang Huanin stopped smiling. Then, let's walk around and see more? Okay. Lu Yi took the lead. Not long after, when the two of them flew over a spirit mountain, they suddenly sensed that there was a battle going on below them. Judging from the shockwaves of the battle, the two parties involved were both cultivators at the Cloud River tier. Lu Yi frowned. His figure flickered, and he rushed in the direction of the battle. Pang Huanin followed closely behind. A moment later, Lu Yi landed somewhere on the spirit mountain. As far as the eye could see, a middle-aged man and an elderly man were locked in a fierce battle for some unknown reason, their spirit chi surging endlessly. Both of them were not young, but their cultivations were not very high. One was in the 6th Order Cloud River realm, while the other was in the 7th Order. In fact, there were many such people in the Cloud River battlefield. The world had a limit to its tolerance, and cultivators had their own limits. Some cultivators would remain in the Spirit Stream realm for their entire lives, unable to break through to the Cloud River realm. Even if some were lucky enough to break through to the Cloud River realm, they would be mediocre in this realm. There were 4 realms in cultivation, and each realm had its own heavenly barrier. Those who could advance bravely were all talented people. For example, the elderly man in front of him had clearly reached his own limits, and it was impossible for his cultivation to increase by too much. If the middle-aged man had the opportunity, he might have a chance to touch the true lake realm, but he would not be able to go too far. Although there was a gap in their cultivations, the one with the lower cultivation obviously had a better foundation. There was a high probability that he had opened more spirit cavities when he was in the Spirit Stream realm. This led to the fact that their strength was almost the same. Lu Yi could tell at a glance that the two were not fighting to the death, because neither of them had any murderous intent. They were just fighting. A soft fragrance floated in the air, and following the source of the fragrance, Lu Yi saw a blooming 3-petaled purple flower. He roughly understood what the two were fighting about, and vaguely realized their identities. Suddenly, someone arrived, and the two sides immediately stopped fighting. They even stood together and looked at Lu Yi and Pang Huanin warily. Such a posture showed that the two knew each other before, so they were able to join forces when facing the two uninvited guests, Lu Yi and Pang Huanin. Looking at Lu Yi and Pang Huanin's attire and sensing the spirit chi fluctuations they had just released, the middle-aged man and the elderly man's faces turned solemn. The man and woman who had just arrived were obviously far stronger than them. Just when the two did not know what to do, Lu Yi spoke first. Is this the territory of Ao Mountain? The middle-aged man nodded immediately. Yes, this is Ao Mountain. Where are you two from, and where are you going? He subconsciously thought that Lu Yi was here to ask for directions. Little did he know that Lu Yi just wanted to make sure that he had not flown out of the territory of his sect. Jade Blood Sect Lu Yi. Lu Yi reported his identity. The middle-aged man and the elderly man were stunned, and then they put away the spirit tools in their hands awkwardly. The middle-aged man cupped his fists and said, "So it's an outstanding disciple of the Jade Blood Sect. Sorry for the disrespect." He thought to himself, the name Lu sounds a little familiar? Why do I feel like I've heard it before? The elderly man remembered Lu Ye's name, and his expression became extremely cautious. He smiled apologetically and said, "Fellow Taoist, please forgive us. The two of us will leave now. The three-petaled red sandalwood flower is yours." Saying so, he pulled the middle-aged man's sleeve, indicating that he should leave quickly. Chapter 851. In the cultivation world of the 9 regions, each sect had its own territory. Depending on the rank of the sect, the size of the territory it occupied varied. When the Jade Blood sect was at its peak, it was a first-grade sect, so it could occupy a huge territory like Ao Mountain. In recent decades, although it had gradually declined and its rank had decreased, the ownership of this territory had never changed. It wasn't that no one had set their sights on Ao Mountain. Every now and then, a new sect would be born in the 9 prefectures, and these sects would need to choose a piece of land as their foundation. Therefore, a famous mountain like Ao Mountain had undoubtedly attracted the attention of many people. However, Tang Yifeng was a spirit sea realm cultivator, so those new sects did not dare to be presumptuous in front of him. In addition, the Jade Blood sect had a close relationship with the Vitality sect, so even when the Jade Blood sect was at its most desolate, no new sect dared to live in the huge Ao Mountain. Until now, the Jade Blood sect showed signs of rising again, so it was impossible for such a thing to happen again. In the territory of a sect, under normal circumstances, non-sect cultivators could not casually step into it without permission. Otherwise, it would be a provocation to the dignity of a sect. This kind of thing could be big or small, and if it was not handled well, it would lead to extremely bad consequences. Every sect would send cultivators to patrol their territory to prevent any troublemakers from causing trouble. However, the Jade Blood sect did not have this ability. Before Lu Yi joined the sect, there were only Tang Yifeng and Shui Yuan in the sect. Even now, although there were many low-level disciples, they were all in the Spirit Stream realm, and all of them stayed in the Spirit Stream battlefield to cultivate and improve their cultivation. Therefore, in the past few decades, Ao Mountain was basically in a state of no one's jurisdiction. Although it belonged to the Jade Blood sect in name, anyone could set foot in it at will. In particular, it attracted many loose cultivators to stay here, and there were even loose cultivators who chose the spirit peaks to open up caves. As for the spirit flowers and herbs that grew in Ao Mountain, they were also popular among the loose cultivators because they could pick these things and exchange them for the cultivation resources they needed. The sect master knew about this, but he had never driven away these loose cultivators. It was not easy for loose cultivators to survive. No matter how many disciples there were in the various sects, at least they could receive a monthly salary and have the protection of their elders. However, loose cultivators had to obtain all their cultivation resources by themselves. Sometimes, for a little merit, they would have to fight until their heads bled. When they encountered danger, there were no elders who could protect them, and they had to fight on their own. The 2 people in front of him were undoubtedly rogue cultivators. Therefore, when he heard Lu Yi introduce himself, the elderly man tugged at the middle-aged man's clothes and urged him to leave quickly. Firstly, Lu Ye's fame had spread far and wide, causing the elderly man to remember Lu Ye's identity. Secondly, everything in Ao Mountain belonged to Jade Blood sect. Strictly speaking, their actions could be considered theft. Now that they had been caught red-handed by Lu Yi, they felt embarrassed and didn't have the face to stay. Just as the 2 were about to leave, Lu Yi suddenly called out, "Wait!" The 2 of them stopped in their tracks and looked at Lu Yi vigilantly. The elderly man said, "What other advice does fellow Taoist have?" Coming to someone else's territory to steal spirit grasses, and being discovered, it was reasonable to say that even Lu Yi would have no problem killing them. Thinking of the various stories he had heard about Lu Yi in the past, the elderly man's heart sank. Could it be that this person wanted to kill him? If that was the case, things would be far from good. "Are you 2 loose cultivators?" Lu Yi asked. There was nothing wrong with admitting it. Both of them nodded. Pang Huanin looked curious. It was the first time she had heard of the term loose cultivator. There was no such term on the Wushuang continent. However, she roughly understood what this term meant. She was puzzled. The 9 provinces was so vast and the cultivation world was so prosperous. How could there be loose cultivators? How long have you two lived here? Lu Yi asked again. Seeing that Lu Yi didn't seem to have the intention to make things difficult for them and seemed to be just asking questions, the elderly man's expression eased a little. He said, "This old man has lived here for almost 10 years. He had reached his limit, so even if he went to the Cloudy River battlefield, he wouldn't be able to get much benefits. Instead, he would encounter more danger. It was better for him to stay on Ao Mountain and retire." 3 years. The middle-aged man replied. His situation was somewhat different from the elderly man's. 3 years ago, he was seriously injured in the Cloudy River battlefield and had nowhere to go. He could only return to the 9 provinces to recuperate, so he stayed on Ao Mountain. In that case, the two of you should know the situation here very well. What do you want to ask, fellow Taoist? The elderly man looked cautious. How many loose cultivators are on Ao Mountain? The elderly man didn't say anything. The middle-aged man couldn't help but frown. It was obvious that they had misunderstood something. The two of you don't have to hide it. I can just ask someone else and I'll get the answer. Even if no one tells me, I have ways to find out. The elderly man sighed. Fellow Taoist, you don't have to be like this. I'll send a message to tell them to leave Ao Mountain within a day and never set foot on Ao Mountain again. He thought that Lu Yi wanted to find out the number of loose cultivators first before chasing them away. They had been on Ao Mountain all these years, and no one cared about them. However, if the Jade Blood sect really wanted to chase them away, they wouldn't be able to stay. You've misunderstood. Lu Yi saw through his thoughts and explained, I don't want to chase you away. Ao Mountain is vast and has countless spiritual peaks. If you want to stay here, it's up to you. How could he interfere with something that even the sect master didn't care about? Although he was lucky enough to join the Jade Blood sect, he knew the hardships of loose cultivators. Wuxia used to be a loose cultivator. In order to get some cultivation resources, she would leave early and return late every day to treat people in the nearby market. Fellow Taoist, are you serious? The elderly man looked at Lu Yi in astonishment. The middle-aged man also looked grateful. Of course I'm serious. Not only that, I'll also give you some benefits. Benefits? The elderly man didn't understand. Lu Yi said, soon, a sect called Ziwei Taoist Palace will be established on Ao Mountain. This sect has a large number of disciples, so they don't accept outsiders. However, if any of you are interested, you can visit the sect and have a chance to join Ziwei Taoist Palace. Ziwei Taoist Palace? The two people in front of him both looked puzzled. They had never heard of this sect before. It should be one of those new sections. However, Lu Yi said that there were a large number of disciples, so they couldn't figure out Ziwei Taoist Palace's background. Generally, new sects didn't have many disciples. Although most loose cultivators yearned to join a certain sect, they weren't so desperate that they couldn't be choosy. Sects of the 3 lower grades were only 7th grade, 8th grade, and 9th grade, because being bound by such a sect was better than living a carefree life on their own. Therefore, even though Lu Yi said it was an opportunity, the two were not tempted. Instead, they became more vigilant. Fellow Taoist, what grade is Ziwei Taoist Palace? How strong are the experts in the sect? At least 6th grade. Moreover, Ziwei Taoist Palace is a subordinate sect of my Jade Blood sect. Subordinate sect. The elderly man and the middle-aged man were both tempted. As for 6th grade or not, they didn't care. The previous subordinate sect of Jade Blood sect was Pill Heart sect, which was now a 2nd grade behemoth. Although Jade Blood sect had declined, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. There were still 2 Divine Sea Realm cultivators in the sect, and it was inextricably linked to many large sects in the War Province. Jade Blood sect was showing signs of rising again. As a subordinate sect of Jade Blood sect, its future wouldn't be bad. Not to mention that it was a 6th grade sect with at least a few true Lake Realm cultivators. If they could join such a sect, it would be the dream of many rogue cultivators. Happiness came so suddenly that the two were at a loss. They wondered if Lu Yi was teasing them. Fellow Taoist, are you joking? The elderly man couldn't understand why Ziwei Taoist Palace would accept rogue cultivators like them. Whether I'm joking or not, we'll see in the future. Lu Yi didn't say anything else. He took a step forward and soared into the sky. Pang Huanin followed closely behind. Looking at the direction the two left, the elderly man and the middle-aged man no longer had any thoughts of fighting for the three-petal red sandalwood flower. After some discussion, they decided to spread the news as soon as possible. The rogue cultivators in Ao Mountain were all in contact with each other. After spending a long time together, they had formed a tacit understanding to help each other. Now that such a good thing had happened, they naturally wouldn't hide it from others. Moreover, this kind of thing couldn't be hidden. Once Ziwei Taoist Palace was established, the news would definitely spread. Flying at a low altitude, Pang Huanin said thoughtfully, "Senior brother wants me to recruit those rogue cultivators?" Lu Yi said, "After all, you weren't born and raised in the 9 regions, so you don't know much about the 9 regions. Now that Jade Blood Sect has a small population, we can't help much. Recruiting a group of local cultivators won't do you any harm. These rogue cultivators have different origins. Some are not qualified enough to join a sect, some are homeless people whose original sect was destroyed, and some are lucky enough to get on the path of cultivation. But in any case, their lives are extremely difficult. Most of them won't miss the opportunity to join a sect. How to select the character of these rogue cultivators shouldn't be a problem for you." Pang Huani nodded. "Although the Wushuang continent isn't as rich and prosperous as the 9 regions, we've seen a lot of the complexity of human nature. Senior brother, you don't have to worry about this. I won't let those with ulterior motives enter the Taoist palace. Well, you only need to remember one thing. These rogue cultivators can be used, but you can't put them in important positions. Senior brother is right. I'll remember it." Suddenly, she remembered something. "Senior brother, you said that the Taoist Palace is a 6th-rank sect. What do you mean?" "I'll have to tell you about the ranking of sects in the 9 regions." Lu Yi told her everything he knew. Pang Huanin was puzzled. "According to Senior brother, our Taoist Palace is at most a 7th-rank sect. It can't reach the 6th rank. A 6th-rank sect must have a true Lake Realm cultivator. This was the most basic requirement." Chapter 852. The grading of the sects and clans in the 9 prefectures was not something that could be interfered with. It was all up to the heavens. This was why the sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge had sent their disciples to hunt Lu Yi down at the Spirit Stream battlefield after learning that the Jade Blood Sect had gained a new disciple. If Lu Yi was killed, the Jade Blood Sect would be completely removed from the sect grading. The Myriad Devil Ridge was very wary of this great enemy that had caused great losses to the Myriad Devil Ridge several decades ago. He had even caused several first-rank sects to fall in rank. Unfortunately, all their efforts had been for naught. Lu Yi had become famous after the battle at the Spirit Stream battlefield, and the Jade Blood Sect had remained. There were many rigid criteria for the grading of sections. For example, the top 3 sects had to have a divine ocean realm cultivator. The middle 3 sects had to have a true lake realm cultivator. As for the lower 3 sects, they had to have a certain number of cloud river realm cultivators. However, the divine ocean realm cultivators in the sect did not necessarily mean that they would be in the top 3 sections. The heavens had their own set of criteria. For example, the Jade Blood Sect's sect master was in the divine ocean realm. However, because the sect only had 2 disciples, Lu Yi and Shui Yuan, they were only in the 9th rank. Even now, the Jade Blood Sect had not been promoted to the middle 3 ranks. This was because the overall strength of the Jade Blood Sect had not reached the middle 3 ranks. Lu Yi had told the 2 loose cultivators that the Purple Star Dao Palace was in the 6th rank. This was obviously not right. Therefore, you need to reach the true lake realm before the sect is established. Lu Yi said, the grading of sects is done once every 3 years. There is only one exception, and that is when a new sect is established. Pang Huanin understood. I understand. You alone might not be able to reach the true lake realm. If the Dao Palace can have 5 people reach the true lake realm, It will definitely be in the 6th rank. What are the benefits of having a high grade? Pang Huanin asked. The biggest benefit is the choice of the Dao Palace's encampment at the Spirit Stream battlefield. Lu Yi then explained the situation at the Spirit Stream battlefield to her in detail. Pang Huanin immediately understood the implications. The Spirit Stream realm was the first realm for cultivators. It was also the realm that laid the foundation. If the disciples could be in an environment rich in spirit qi, they would undoubtedly be able to obtain greater benefits. If the Ziwei Taoist Palace wanted to continue its legacy in the 9 states, then the foundation of the Spirit Stream battlefield must be solid. As the most powerful human cultivator on the Peerless continent, Pang Huanin had obtained the Peerless Origin power. She was extremely talented, and she had already reached the peak of the Cloud River tier. However, due to the limitations of heaven and earth, she was unable to reach the threshold of the true lake tier. However, things were different here in the 9 continents. She could already feel that the bottleneck that was troubling her was loosening up. Therefore, she was confident that she could advance to the true lake stage in a short period of time. As for the 5 people that Lu Yi mentioned, there weren't many 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators in the Dao Palace, but they weren't few either. Gathering 5 of them and finding a way to help them reach the true lake realm shouldn't be a problem. A rank 6 grade was basically stable. Furthermore, it was not easy for a sect to establish itself. Even if Pang Huanin had chosen the Holy Ji Palace's territory, the Holy Ji Palace would still have to send people over to build a foundation for their own sect. No matter how efficient the cultivators were, it would still take them a month or 2 to complete the task. Therefore, it would take at least 1 or 2 months for the Dao Palace to establish itself in the 9 states. This period of time was enough for Pang Huanin and the other cultivators to advance to the true lake realm. The 2 talked as they flew. Half a day later, they landed on a spirit peak and Pang Huanin said, "Let's do it here." With this place as the center, there are 30 spirit peaks nearby. There were tens of thousands of cultivators in the Dao Palace, so 30 peaks were more than enough. Moreover, the cultivators in the Dao Palace were all at the Spirit Stream realm and Cloud River realm. Once they set foot in the 9 states, most of them would enter the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. I'll have to trouble Senior Brother to report back to Sect Master Tang and ask for his permission. Lu Yi nodded. Let's go back. However, there was probably no problem with this matter. Since the Sect Master had allowed Pang Huanin to choose freely, as long as her request wasn't too excessive, the Sect Master would agree. After all, there were many spirit peaks in Ao Mountain that were idle. He led Pang Huanin back to the Jianghu Peak, but he didn't see the Sect Master or his second senior sister. Senior Brother, I'll have to return to the Peerless Continent first and inform the Holy Ji Palace cultivators about what happened here so that they can make preparations. Also, I'll have to pick a few people and bring them here to advance to the true lake realm. I'll have to trouble Senior Brother when the time comes. No problem. Lu Yi nodded. Pang Huanin could now freely travel between the 9 prefectures and the Peerless Continent with the help of the Jade Blood Sect's Tianji Pillar. However, if they wanted to advance to the true lake realm, they would need the help of some spirit pills. He could ask his second senior sister about this matter. Now that she was in the Divine Sea realm, it would be a piece of cake for her to solve the problem of advancing to the true lake realm from the Cloud River realm. After thinking about it, Lu Yi didn't look for his second senior sister. Instead, he flew to the Mingxin Peak. He had already acknowledged Madame Yun as his master, but he lacked a formal ceremony. Now that he had returned, he naturally had to pay her a visit. However, it was a pity that he didn't see his master this time. He only saw her avatar, Xiao Dai. Xiao Dai told Lu Yi that his master had been repairing the dragon throne with the help of the sect master recently and hadn't shown up for a long time. As for the progress of the repair, Xiao Dai didn't know. Although she was only his master's avatar, if the master didn't share her knowledge, she wouldn't be able to pry into the master's thoughts. Lu Yi told Xiao Dai about Pang Huanin's situation in detail and asked her to inform the sect master when she met him. Xiao Dai naturally agreed. After leaving the Mingxin Peak, Lu Yi returned to his Jade Bamboo Peak. Only then did he see his second senior sister. It turned out that his second senior sister was hiding here to teach Wuxia about medical cultivation. Lu Yi didn't disturb her. He originally wanted to cultivate to the peak of the Cloud River realm in the Cloudy River battlefield and rearrange the array in the spiritual land. Then he would advance to the True Lake realm and leave the Cloudy River battlefield. However, man proposes, God disposes. The migration of the Wu Shuang continent caused all the cultivators to be expelled from the Cloudy River battlefield. Although he could continue to wait for the day when the Cloudy River battlefield reopened, no one knew when that day would come. On second thought, he had already laid a solid foundation in the spiritual land. When the disciples of his sect entered the spiritual land, they would be protected by the wolf pack. He wouldn't have to worry so much. It was more important to advance to the True Lake realm. In the end, a cultivator's cultivation was still the most important. He still had a lot of golden spirit lots left, enough for him to advance to the True Lake realm. Thinking of this, Lu Yi made a decision. However, just as he was about to use the golden spirit lots to cultivate, a loud voice suddenly came from the Jade Blood sect. Where are the people of the Jade Blood sect? The voice was activated by spiritual energy and spread in all directions. Everyone within 100 miles could hear it clearly. Lu Yi, who had just sat down and prepared to cultivate, raised his eyebrows. It had been several years since Yang Kai had joined Blue Blood sect, and although he hadn't spent much time in the sect, he had never met anyone from any other sect. Only once did the headmaster of 3 Holy Courtyard come to the sect and fight with the sect master over the matter of the headmaster kidnapping one of his sect's disciples. Lu Yi couldn't help but feel suspicious. Who was this person that dared to come to the Jade Blood sect and shout? The sect master was currently helping his master repair the dragon throne at the Clear Heart Peak. He obviously wouldn't be able to come out for a short period of time. Lu Ye's heart moved. He hurriedly got up and opened the door. He saw Shui Yuan rushing towards the Jade Blood sect. Hua Si, who appeared with her, looked in that direction. Her expression was the same as Lu Ye's, filled with confusion. On the other side, Giant Armor, who was cultivating, was also alarmed and appeared. Although the 3 of them didn't know what was going on, they all moved and followed Shui Yuan closely. After a while, they rushed to the Jade Blood sect and saw a young man in silver armor waiting for them. Seeing the young man's attire, Shui Yuan couldn't help but frown. The aura of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator also leaked out intentionally or unintentionally. The person's strength was obviously not at the Divine Sea Realm. He was only at the True Lake realm. Feeling the pressure from Shui Yuan, his expression couldn't help but become serious. He cupped his fists and saluted, "Greetings, Senior Sister Shui Yuan." Shui Yuan nodded slightly with a solemn expression. "What's the matter?" The young man turned his hand and a bronze token appeared in his palm. He raised it high and said in a sonorous voice, "I am Zhao Che of the Grand Sky City Dispatch Department. I've been ordered to come here." Jade Blood sect received the order. Although Shui Yuan was a little reluctant, in front of this bronze token, she had to withdraw her Divine Sea Realm aura. She cupped her fists and listened respectfully. Zhao Che said in a clear voice, "The Elder Committee has ordered the Jade Blood sect to send at least 1 disciple to Grand Sky City within 3 days, and no limit to the number of disciples. There must be no mistakes in this matter, and anyone who disobeys will be killed without mercy." Shui Yuan sighed in her heart. She knew that what was supposed to come had come. She handed it over with both hands. Jade Blood sect's Shui Yuan, receive the order. Zhao Che placed the bronze token in Shui Yuan's hand and saluted again. "Senior sister, please don't blame me. I'm just following orders." As he spoke, he looked behind Shui Yuan and his gaze stopped on Lu Yi for a moment. He said in a low voice, "Deputy Alliance Leader Pang has already done his best. However, it's not good to delay too much. I thought that I could delay for a while, but I didn't expect that there would be some changes at the Cloudy River battlefield. Now that a storm is coming at the various passes, this matter can only be brought forward. As for the selection of people here, Senior Sister should discuss it with Sect Leader Tang. However, they must arrive at Grand Sky City within 3 days." His previous tough attitude was because he came on behalf of the Grand Sky Alliance. Now, he reminded her in a low voice because he was standing on his own side. I understand. Yes. Goodbye. Zhao Che cupped his fists and soared into the sky. He really came in a hurry and left in a hurry. Shui Yuan stood in place, holding the bronze token. She was speechless for a long time. Lu Yi and the others were a little confused. However, just by looking at Shui Yuan's state, they knew that something must have happened that she didn't want to see. After a long while, Shui Yuan sighed. She turned around and looked at Lu Yi, then at Hua Si and Giant Jia. She said, "There are some things that I have to tell you. Click and download the best book-chasing app. Many readers use this to read books aloud." Chapter 853. Although she said that, Shui Yuan's expression was very conflicted. She did not speak for a long time, as if she was considering her words, or there was something she found hard to say. Third senior sister, just say what you want. We're not outsiders, Lu Yi said. He had also heard Zhao Che's order clearly. He needed the Blue Blood sect to select at least one person and have them rush to a place called Grand Sky City within 3 days to await orders. Even though he wasn't sure why Shui Yuan, who was in the Spirit Ocean stage, was so respectful towards Zhao Che, who was in the True Lake stage, and he didn't even know what kind of place Grand Sky City was. However, Zhao Che's gaze lingered on him for a moment, which made Lu Yi feel that this matter had something to do with him. Hearing Lu Ye's words, Shui Yuan sighed again. Only then did she say, "In the cultivation world of the 9 provinces, the vast Sky Alliance and the myriad Demon Ridge have been at odds with each other for thousands of years. Even those independent cultivators who do not belong to any sect cannot avoid this." Independent cultivators did not belong to any sect, but they had their own factions. It could be said that any cultivator who had a battlefield imprint belonged to a faction. For example, the 2 independent cultivators that Lu Yi had met in Mount Tung were definitely from the vast Sky Alliance's faction. If they were independent cultivators from the myriad Demon Ridge's faction, they definitely would not dare to stay in Mount Tung. When you were in the Spirit Stream tier, you were in the Spirit Stream battlefield. You used your own sect's encampment as your foundation to fight against enemies from all sides. When you reached the Cloud River tier, although you no longer have your sect's encampment, this kind of fighting still continued, Shui Yuan continued. And outside of these 2 battlefields, the entire 9 provinces is the true, largest battlefield. It's just that you've never come into contact with it before. It's not that your cultivation is insufficient, but this matter has been suppressed by the old man. Of course, that Vice Alliance leader Pang of the Vitality sect also played a huge role. If it were not for his favoritism, the old man alone would not have been able to suppress this matter. Lu Yi frowned. What matter? Shui Yuan replied, join the military provincial guards. Military provincial guards? The 9 provinces, the 9 great continents, the Heaven continent, the Green continent, the War continent, the Thunder continent, the Ding continent, the Cloud continent, the Mist continent, the Serenity continent, and the Tsong continent. Among the 9 great provinces, the Heaven continent is in the middle. The other 8 provinces are divided into 8 extremes, bordering each other. Among them, the Green province, Mist province, and Tsong province belong to the Haotian Alliance. The Cloud province, Thunder province, and Nether province belong to the Myriad Demons Ridge. As for the Heaven continent, the Ding province, and our military province, they don't have complete ownership. Inside the main hall, Shui Yuan's voice sounded faintly. Lu Yi and the others listened attentively. Lu Yi only knew the names of the 9 continents, but he never knew that the War province was the place where the 2 camps were fighting, nor did he know who the other continents belonged to. It was mainly because he had too little contact with the 9 regions. Before joining the Blue Blood sect, he had been a slave miner in Evil Moon Valley, struggling to survive every day. He had no time to pay attention to the general trend of the world, nor did he have the means to do so. After joining the Blue Blood sect, he spent 99% of his time at the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield. Occasionally he would return to the sect, but he would be in a hurry. Not to mention anything else, when he accompanied Pang Huanin to tour Mount Tung, he didn't even know how far Mount Tung covered. He even had to ask the wandering cultivators. Just as he said to Pang Huanin, that was the first time he had left the main peak of the sect for 15 kilometers, he had just barely understood the matter of Mount Tung. It wasn't that he was ignorant. It was just that the situation of the Blue Blood sect was special. He didn't have many senior brothers and sisters to impart such common knowledge to him. For example, the other sects of the 9 regions had many disciples of all realms. All kinds of things happened. Under the influence of the disciples, they could more or less understand many things without experiencing it themselves. Lu Yi couldn't do that. He had to experience it himself or listen to Shui Yuan's explanation. Only then could he understand some things. Now that Shui Yuan mentioned it, Lu Yi knew that 6 of the 9 regions were completely controlled by the 2 camps. The other 3, including the military province where the Blue Blood sect was located, were the places where the 2 camps were fighting over. The Haotian Alliance is a collective name. Everyone who comes from this camp is a cultivator of the Haotian Alliance. However, the 9 regions are vast, and the number of cultivators of the Haotian Alliance is as many as the stars in the sky. It is difficult for such a huge force to be unified. Therefore, each continent has its own continent guards. For example, our War Province has the War Province Guards. The Qing Province has the Qing Province Guards. The situation is roughly the same in the Wanmo Ridge. Where do the continent guards come from? Naturally, they were recruited from various large and small sects and families. Every sect and family that has a foothold in the 9 states has the responsibility to provide military strength to the state guards. My Jade Blood sect is naturally no exception. The sect leader and I are both military state guards, and we hold positions within. Hearing this, Lu Yi roughly understood. So the War Province Guards want us to send someone over in 3 days? Shui Yuan nodded. The ranks of the sects are different, and the number of disciples in the sect is different. The number of continent guards that need to be recruited is naturally different. Some sects have many disciples, so they need to recruit more. Some sects have few disciples, so they need to recruit less. However, in general, from the Cloud River tier to the True Lake tier, and then to the Spirit Ocean tier, a sect needs to provide troops to the continent guards according to a certain ratio. They need to be dispatched to jointly protect the War Province and not let the War Province fall into the hands of the Wanmo Ridge. Lu Yi agreed with this. Since we are under the protection of the War Province, we should contribute our strength. The situation of our Blue Blood sect is special. Before you were here, there was only me and the old man. Therefore, the War Province Guards didn't ask much of our sect. In addition to the care of Vice Alliance leader Pang, the old man and I only needed to take some time and take turns to listen to orders. Little junior brother, do you still remember the evil Moon Valley? I will never forget it. That time, the old man was carrying out the mission of the War Province Guards. Lu Yi nodded in understanding. Compared to a few years ago, our sect has many more disciples, and the 3 of you have advanced to the Cloud River tier. Logically speaking, it is indeed time to send people to the War Province Guards. In fact, when you had just advanced to the Cloud River tier, someone in Vast Sky City had already mentioned this matter. However, the old man knew, and ordinary people didn't want to easily offend him. With his obstruction, and with Vice Alliance leader Pang's favoritism, this matter didn't succeed. Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly. It sounds like someone wants me to join the War Province Guards as soon as possible? Joining the War Province Guards to protect the War Province Haotian Alliance's defensive line was obviously more dangerous than cultivating on the Cloud River battlefield. This was because the enemies the War Province Guards encountered were not like the ones on the Cloud River battlefield, where they were all cultivators of the same tier. The environment of the War Province Guards was even worse. If one was unlucky, it was possible to encounter True Lake tier or even Spirit Ocean tier cultivators. The sect leader's obstruction and Vice Alliance leader Pang's secret favoritism were all a type of protection for him. Lu Yi really wanted to know who had spent so much effort to keep an eye on him, a mere Cloud River tier cultivator. To be able to have such thoughts, and to be able to facilitate this matter, their strength and status would definitely not be low. Shui Yuan didn't answer this matter. Perhaps she didn't know, or perhaps she didn't want to talk about it. She just said, because of the war 30 years ago, there are actually many sects in the 9 regions that don't like us. Lu Yi was not clear about the battle 30 years ago. He only knew that his eldest senior brother had made a grave mistake, causing many elites who had followed him to die in battle, causing a considerable number of sects to suffer unimaginable losses. His eldest senior brother was gone, but the Jade Blood sect still existed, so it was natural that people would bear grudges. However, relatively speaking, the Jade Blood sect also had many friends. When Lu Yi had been hunted down on the Spirit Stream battlefield, many people he did not know had been ordered by the sect to escort him. This had given him the chance to set foot on the Golden Light Summit and wait for his eldest senior sister and 4th senior brother. Now, there is a problem with the Cloud River battlefield. All the Cloud River tier cultivators have been expelled from the Cloud River battlefield, and large numbers of cultivators have flooded into the place where the two sides are fighting. It is probably because of this reason that Vice Alliance leader Pang can no longer be biased, and can only allow the elders of Vast Sky City to issue the transfer order. What will come will come, 2nd senior sister does not need to worry. I will accept this transfer order, Lu Yi said. Previously, he had still been thinking about where he should go to cultivate after leaving the Cloud River battlefield, but he had not thought that there was no need for him to think too much. Someone had already arranged the path ahead for him. Perhaps there were people who did not have good intentions, but this was ultimately something that could not be avoided. To be able to suppress it for such a long time was already the limit. Moreover, Lu Yi himself did not reject this kind of thing. Ever since he had reached the Spirit Stream tier, he had fought against the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge in all kinds of ways, and had always been targeted by the Myriad Demons Ridge. He had passed through many storms, so joining the military prefecture guards and continuing to fight against the Myriad Demons Ridge was nothing to him. I will go too, Giant Armor suddenly said in a droning voice. Let's go together. Hua Ci smiled slightly. The transfer order said that at least one person would be transferred, and this was only the lower limit. There was no limit to the upper limit, so there was definitely no problem for 3 people to go together, and the military prefecture guards would definitely welcome it. You two don't need to go. We know nothing about the situation over there. I will go and scout the way first, and when I have a firm foothold, it will not be too late for you two to come back. There were people who could not wait for him to join the military prefecture guards, and clearly did not have good intentions. If he went alone, he could still be flexible, but if Giant Armor and Hua Ci came together, the situation would only be more troublesome. Moreover, ever since he started cultivating, he had always been on the 2 battlefields. He had not experienced what the 9 provinces was like, so he could take this opportunity to go out and take a look, and see the true scenery of the 9 provinces. Compared to the 2 battlefields, the 9 provinces was the true stage for cultivators to display themselves. This stage was much wider than the 2 battlefields. Giant Armor shook his head. Lu Yi glared. It's decided then. Shaking his head was useless. He looked at Hua Ci again. You are not allowed to go either. Hua Ci curled her lips. Shui Yuan could not help but laugh. Don't think that joining the military prefecture guards is some kind of hard work. Actually, joining the military prefecture guards has some benefits. Lu Yi could not help but be interested. What benefits? Chapter 854. After joining the military state guard, depending on the rank of the soldier, you will receive a monthly salary of different grades. That monthly salary is not spirit pills or spirit stones, but rather battle achievements. Shui Yuan slowly said. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. Battle achievements. These 2 words were extremely attractive to the cultivators of the 9 provinces, because battle achievements could be exchanged for spirit sticks directly from the Tianji treasury. This was one of the methods for cultivators to quickly increase their cultivation. Moreover, it was in the form of a monthly salary. In other words, after joining the military state guard, you would receive battle achievements every month. Just this point alone made the cultivators in the 9 provinces who wanted to join the military state guard countless times. With this as an attraction, The military state guard did not need to select people from the various large sects at all. The cultivators of the various sects and families in the 9 provinces, when their cultivation reached a certain level, would all actively choose to join the military state guard. Only the Jade Blood sect's situation was a bit special. Lu Yi had never known of the military state guard's existence before, so he had never thought of joining. The monthly salary is only the foundation. If you carry out missions for the military state guard or kill enemies in battle, you can receive battle achievements. There's such a good thing. That's why the War Province Guards don't only have cultivators above the Cloud River tier, but also many in the Spirit Stream tier. Some of the disciples of the sects will plan ahead and join the War Province Guards as early as the Spirit Stream tier. They will use this opportunity to gain battle merits and make plans for the future. Of course, Spirit Stream Realm cultivators were not very strong, and their ability to protect themselves was weak, so even if they joined the military state guard, they would not be assigned missions that were too dangerous. Most of them would stay in one place and cooperate with cultivators of higher cultivation to defend against external enemies. Moreover, they would not stay there for long. Most of them would obtain some battle achievements and return to the Spirit Stream battlefield to cultivate. Relatively speaking, it was more dangerous than the Spirit Stream battlefield, but the battle achievements were incomparable to the Spirit Stream battlefield. The more Shui Yuan talked about the military state guard, the more excited Lu Yi became. Originally, he did not have any objections to joining the military state guard, but now he was looking forward to it. However, he also knew that if he really joined the military state guard, his future days would not be as carefree as they were in the Cloud River battlefield. Up until now, whether it was in the Spirit Stream battlefield or the Cloud River battlefield, the enemies he had encountered were all cultivators of the same realm. However, after entering the military prefecture guards, he did not only meet cultivators of the same realm. Those true Lake Stage and Divine Sea Stage cultivators were also active in the front lines of the confrontation between the 2 factions. Little junior brother, are you confident that you can advance to the true Lake Stage within 3 days? Shui Yuan asked. Lu Yi shook his head. I just broke through to the 9th order. There's still a long way to go before I can break through to the true lake realm. The golden spiritual stick in his hand was enough, but the time was tight. 3 days was definitely not enough. That's a pity, Shui Yuan said. If Lu Yi could advance to the true lake realm before joining the military state guards, then his ability to protect himself would be greatly increased. Moreover, after joining the military state guards, everyone would have their own position. The higher one's cultivation, the higher the starting position, and naturally, the higher the monthly salary. A Cloud River 9th Order cultivator and a true Lake Realm cultivator would receive completely different treatment. Fortunately, Lu Yi was not far from the true Lake Stage. Second senior sister, I want to know how I should cultivate when I advance to the true Lake Stage. The world energy in the 9 continents is not dense, and is not even comparable to the Spirit Stream battlefield. Wouldn't the efficiency of cultivation be too low if I absorb world energy like this? His main cultivation method was not to absorb world energy, but if the world energy was dense enough, it could also increase his cultivation efficiency. How did the true Lake Stage and Divine Sea Stage cultivators in the 9 continents cultivate? This was something he needed to understand right now. Originally, he had planned to ask his second senior sister about it after he advanced to the true Lake Stage, but now that Grand Sky City had issued a transfer order, he had to rush there within 3 days. It would be difficult for him to have the opportunity to ask his second senior sister about it in the future. Taking this opportunity, of course, he had to understand. Since Hua Ci and Giant Armor were here, he could let them listen. Cultivation above the true lake stage consumes a huge amount of resources. Shui Yuan said slowly. Lu Yi and the others listened attentively and finally understood how cultivators above the true lake stage cultivated. He was secretly speechless. He only knew one thing before, and that was that cultivators above the true lake stage consumed a lot of resources. As for how it was consumed, he was not clear. Only now did he understand. No wonder Shui Yuan had been stuck at the true lake stage. Even if she was talented, it was difficult for her to advance. It was only when Lu Yi brought back a large amount of resources for the Jade Blood sect that Shui Yuan broke through to the Divine Sea stage. All of this was caused by the lack of resources on the Jade Blood sect's side. Before Lu Yi came, the entire Jade Blood sect only had Shui Yuan and the sect master. Even if she was on duty at the War Province Guards and received a monthly salary, it was still a drop in the bucket for her cultivation needs. From the looks of it, before leaving, she had to make some preparations. Afterwards, Shui Yuan told Lu Yi many things about the War Province Guards. Lu Yi memorized them one by one. These were all accumulated from her own experience. Who knows, they might be of great help to Lu Yi in the future. Shui Yuan only stopped when the sky turned dark. She had already warned her. The chicks would eventually leave the nest and fly into the sky. Previously, the sect master did not want Lu Yi to join the War Province Guards early. On one hand, the sect master did not want Lu Yi to join the War Province Guards early. On the other hand, it was for Lu Ye's safety. However, as Lu Ye's cultivation increased, she would eventually have to take this step. This was something she could not avoid. Wuxia and Giant Armor returned to the Emerald Bamboo Peak, while Lu Yi followed Shui Yuan to the treasury of the Jade Blood sect. A while later, he arrived before the Pillar of Heavenly Secrets and connected his mind to the Treasury of Heavenly Secrets. He took out large amounts of resources from the treasury of the Jade Blood sect and sold them to the Treasury of Heavenly Secrets. His merit points were increasing at an extremely exaggerated rate. Only 4 hours later did Lu Yi emerge from the Hall of Heavenly Secrets, shooting towards the Emerald Bamboo Peak in a flash. He entered his bamboo hut and sat down with his legs crossed. Hupe and Yi were not present. The former was with Giant Armor, while the latter was with Wuxia. Lu Yi held a 10-point map in his hand, investigating the location of Great Heaven City. He had just purchased this 10-point map from the Treasury of Heavenly Secrets. It was a 10-point map of the entire 9 provinces. It was extremely expensive, but it was worth it. He would need this when he moved through the 9 provinces in the future. From the 10-point map, the entire 9 provinces were divided into 9 large plates, which were the 9 provinces. The Green Province, Mist Province, and Song Province were blue. Clearly, it was just as Shui Yuan had said. These 3 provinces were under the control of the Grand Heaven Alliance. The Cloud Province, Thunder Province, and Serenity Province were red. The Heaven Province, War Province, and Ding Province were alternating between red and blue, indicating the conflict between the 2 great factions. Lu Yi glanced over it roughly. Based on what Shui Yuan had said before, he gained a slight understanding of the situation across the 9 provinces. Then he looked at the map of the War Province. 12 passes stood where the red and blue lines intersected. They were like towering mountains, forming the front line of defense for the Grand Heaven Alliance. These were the 12 passes of the War Province. Every single pass was guarded by a tremendous number of cultivators. After the 12 stages, there was a lofty city that stood tall. It was Vast Sky City. This city was the central hub of the War Province Guards. All sorts of orders and decisions regarding war were passed down from here. Zhao Che from before came from the command department of Great Heaven City. There was also a group of elders in Great Heaven City, led by Pang Zhen of the Vitality sect. The members were all Divine Sea Realm cultivators from the various large sects of the War Province. The sect leader, Tang Yifeng, was also a member of the group of elders. Logically speaking, he was qualified to live in Great Heaven City and become one of the decision-makers. However, the sect leader had never been involved in these matters. Because of the war decades ago, the reputation of the Jade Blood sect had plummeted. Many powerhouses from other sects hated the Jade Blood sect. Under such circumstances, how could the sect leader be disliked by others? Over the years, although he held the position of an elder in the group of elders, he had never made any decisions. He only followed orders and acted in such a low-key manner that the world had almost forgotten him. If Lu Yi hadn't appeared out of nowhere and made the sect leaders see the hope of the Jade Blood sect rising again, he wouldn't have changed his low-key style. Now, his well-respected image had completely collapsed. The large sects of the War Province all turned pale at the mention of Tang Yifeng. What Lu Yi needed to do now was to rush to Great Heaven City to report in 3 days, enter the War Province guards there, and confirm his position. Then he would see which pass Great Heaven City would send him to. These things were not up to him to decide. He could only resign himself to fate. However, there was clearly someone in Great Heaven City keeping an eye on him. This time, as soon as there was a problem in the Cloud River battlefield, the transfer order came. It could be seen how efficient they were. Therefore, Lu Yi understood that when he arrived at the War Province guards, the task assigned to him would definitely not be good. It was useless to think too much. It was more important to work hard to improve his cultivation. Although time was tight, it was still enough for him to use a golden spiritual stick. Calling back Yi and Hupa, Lu Yi crushed a golden spiritual stick and sat upright to cultivate. After a day and a night, the spiritual stick's effect was exhausted. Lu Yi got up and pushed open the door. "Let's go," he softly said, and his figure soared into the sky. There was no need to say goodbye to anyone. There would be a day when they would meet again. It was normal for cultivators to separate and join up. On Defender Peak, Shui Yuan opened her eyes and looked in the direction Lu Yi left in. She slowly got up. On Bright Heart Peak, 2 figures stood. It was the sect leader and Madame Yun. "Did you find out who it was?" Madame Yun's voice was cold. When the transfer order came, Lu Yi could feel that he was being watched by someone. How could Madame Yun not feel it? Although she and the sect leader had been working hard to repair the Dragon Emperor these days, it was not that they did not pay attention to what was happening outside. 4 divine ocean realm cultivators like them, as long as they wanted to, nothing could escape their senses. The sect leader shook his head. "We only have a rough idea. Sigh, it's just those few sections. Is it related to Pill Heart sect?" "It shouldn't be related. Although Pill Heart sect has cut ties with our sect, they wouldn't do something like this." "I don't care who it is. If he dares to harm my disciple, I will make him pay with his blood. He's doing things within the rules. I don't care what rules he has. I only have one disciple. If something happens to him, no one else will live." Chapter 855. The sect master was speechless, but he knew that Madame Yun was not speaking out of anger. She could really do it. Shielding one's own shortcomings was not something that only Blue Blood sect could do. Several decades ago, Yun Xuechu's name had spread throughout the 9 provinces, and it was unknown how many top sects had tried to win her over, but they had all been rejected by her. Now, although she did not belong to any sect, the connections she had accumulated over the years were unimaginable. If she was angry, even Pangjin would have to think twice. When the Dragon Emperor is repaired, you can go to Grand Sky City. Since you're a member of the Elder Group, you can play a small role there. Okay. The sect master nodded. He did not like fighting for power, nor did he want to fight with others. However, the Jade Blood sect had developed so far that its disciples joining the military state guard had become the norm. Today, there was only one Lu Yi, but there would be more in the future. With his help in the Elder Group, even if he did not give the disciples any special privileges, at least they would not be bullied. Even if Madame Yun did not mention this, the sect master would have thought about it. Now that Shui Yuan had reached the Divine Sea realm, she was strong enough to shoulder the burden of the Jade Blood sect. He could leave without worry. Although he had traveled extensively in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield and experienced many exciting things, leaving the Jade Blood sect for Grand Sky City still gave Lu Yi a strange feeling of leaving home for the first time. There was some anticipation, some excitement, and some reluctance. The spirit boat flew through the sky, looking at the beautiful scenery of the mountains below. With his current speed, it would take him more than 2 days to get to Vast Sky City. If he activated his flying wings and wind travel, it would only be faster if he disregarded the cost. With a 10 points map to guide him, he would not get lost. He traveled all the way and gradually left Ao Mountain. Less than half a day later, when Lu Yi was sitting cross-legged on the spirit boat leisurely, a series of exclamations suddenly came from below, mixed with cries and panicked voices. "Lu Yi, there seems to be a flood below," Bi, who was steering the spirit boat, said. Lu Yi hurriedly got up and looked down. He saw that the ground was flooded, and a small village was completely submerged. Under the impact of the flood, most of the houses had collapsed, and only the roofs of the few that were still standing were above the water. In the distance, he could see some figures standing on the roofs, weak and helpless. Cries for help and cries of children filled the air. Save them! Lu Yi hurriedly put away the spirit boat and rushed down. Most of the people he had encountered in the Spirit Stream battlefield and the Cloud River battlefield were cultivators. However, there were still a large number of mortals living in the 9 regions. It was precisely because of these mortals who did not have long lifespans and were prone to illness that the cultivators were born. If a cultivator encountered such a flood, they would naturally be able to escape easily. However, for mortals, such a natural disaster was simply unstoppable. Under normal circumstances, a mortal's residence would be protected by the sect's territory. In fact, there were many mortals living within the territory of the Jade Blood sect. There were even many cities that relied on the Jade Blood sect for survival and were protected by the Jade Blood sect. However, the Jade Blood sect had been desolate in the past, so there were no extra people in the sect to patrol the territory and help the mortals resist disasters. Therefore, in the past few decades, many mortals had migrated away from the territory of the Jade Blood sect. This was also the reason why the sect master liked to run to other people's apprenticeship ceremonies to snatch people away. There were few people in the sect's territory, so naturally, there were not many with cultivation aptitude. Lu Yi did not know which sect this area belonged to, but with the sudden flood, it would take time for the cultivators of this sect to rush over. Since he had encountered it, he naturally could not sit back and do nothing. 9-front formation! Lu Yi shouted. Yi hurriedly took out the 9-front formation and threw it to him. Lu Yi caught it and held it in his hand. There were not many people living in this village, but there were dozens of families. Now that they were all swept up in the flood, their lives were out of control. It was too unrealistic for him and Yi to save them by themselves. They had to borrow the power of the 9-front formation. This thing could trap people, so it was suitable to be used in this place. The only thing that needed to be used was the spiritual energy used to maintain the 9-front formation. Mother! Father! On the crown of a big tree, a 10-year-old child called out loudly. However, his parents were nowhere to be seen. Fortunately, he had cultivated the ability to climb trees. Otherwise, he would have been swept away by the flood. Suddenly, there was a strong wind above his head. The child looked up and saw a person swooping down from the sky. Immediately after, something covered him. His vision turned black. When he came back to his senses, he had already appeared in a messy stone forest. The child was helpless and terrified. Although he did not know what had happened, he knew that he had been saved by a cultivator. But where was this? Just as he was at a loss of what to do, a figure suddenly appeared beside him. It was a white-haired old man. The old man seemed to have been soaked in the water for a while, as he was shivering from the cold. Seeing the old man, the child hurriedly ran over. Grandpa Chin! Ernyo! The old man coughed softly. Grandpa Chin, have you seen my parents? Where is this place? Your parents? Don't worry. The cultivators of the Clear Spring sect have come to save us. This is a safe place, the old man with the surname Chin comforted the child. He did not know where this place was either. He even mistakenly thought that Lu Yi was a cultivator of the Clear Spring sect. Since it was a cultivator's method, ordinary people naturally could not understand it. More and more people appeared in the messy stone forest. Suddenly, Ernyo cried out in pleasant surprise. Father, mother! She hurriedly rushed over, only to see her parents, whom she had lost contact with. The husband and wife had just escaped and saw their child again. They were so happy that they cried and hugged him tightly, afraid that they would lose him again. Lu Ye's figure shuttled back and forth, taking the struggling people into the 9-front formation. Yi and Hupo were also helping, constantly saving the surrounding villagers and sending them to Lu Yi. However, comparatively speaking, the people saved by Hupo were undoubtedly greatly frightened. Hupo opened his bloody mouth and bit on their clothes. This kind of shock was not something that ordinary people could endure. Among the people saved by Hupe, more than half of them fainted from fright. Those who did not faint even punched and kicked Hupe, which made Hupe very gloomy. In just a few dozen breaths' time, Lu Yi had already saved all the villagers that he could see. As for those that he could not see, they were probably already dead. At this moment, several streaks of light hurriedly rushed over from afar. The person in the lead shouted, "Which cultivator has lent a hand? The Clear Spring sect is endlessly grateful." This was the territory of the Clear Spring sect, and they were also cultivators of the Clear Spring sect. They just happened to be patrolling the nearby territory. When they learned that there was a sudden flood here, they immediately sent a message to the sect. At the same time, they hurriedly rushed over and saw the scene of Lu Yi saving people from afar. As the voice fell, the few of them rushed over to Lu Yi. The leader was at the Cloud River tier, and the others were all at the Spirit Stream tier. When they got closer and saw Lu Ye's face clearly, the leader was shocked. Jade Blood Sect's Lu Ye, fellow cultivator Lu? He had obviously paid special attention to Lu Yi and had probably seen his image before. Thus, he recognized Lu Ye's identity at a glance. Lu Yi nodded. Holding the 9-front formation in his hand, he continuously urged his spiritual power into it. However, he had no intention of exchanging pleasantries with him. He looked into the distance, and a city several dozen kilometers away came into view. And that city was shockingly on the path of the flood. At this moment, the monstrous flood was only less than 5 kilometers away from that city. Mortals naturally did not see as far as cultivators. There were many mortals in that city who lived and worked peacefully, completely unaware that a disaster was about to befall them. The city could not be considered large, but there were at least several tens of thousands of people living there. Lu Yi could save the survivors of this village by himself, but there was no way he could save the entire city. The few cultivators of the Clear Spring sect who had arrived obviously also saw this scene. The leader's expression changed. Oh no! In the face of such a natural disaster, even Cloud River tier cultivators appeared powerless. Although they had already sent a message to the sect, it would still take time for the people of the sect to rush over. Everyone, quickly go to that small city to warn and evacuate the people. I will go and see the source. Lu Yi said, then handed the 9-front formation in his hand to Yi. A pair of fiery red wings suddenly spread out on his back. With the support of wind travel, he turned into a stream of flame and swept in the direction of the source of the flood. In the present situation, if they wanted to save the people in that city, they could only solve the problem at the source. Otherwise, the entire city would be submerged. Looking in the direction that Lu Yi had left, the leader of the Clear Spring sect disciples seemed to have awakened from a dream. He continued to send a message to the sect to report the situation as he led his junior brothers and sisters toward the small city. A moment later, the peaceful and quiet city was in chaos. On the other side, Yi, who was holding the 9-front formation, arrived on a high ground. She released all the people that had been previously stored in the formation and warned, "Don't run around. Everyone stay here. The people of the Clear Spring sect will soon come to settle you down." Then she turned around and mounted Hupe, quickly chasing in the direction that Lu Yi had gone. In the frightened crowd, 2 men looked at the direction that Yi had gone with a complicated gaze. "Big brother, that person just now was Lu Yi, right?" One of them asked softly. The other man was silent. "I haven't seen him for a few years, and he's already so powerful." The person who spoke earlier sighed with emotion. Thinking back to when they were mining slaves in the Evil Moon Valley, the 2 brothers had a lot of friction with Lu Yi and were taught a few harsh lessons by Lu Yi. Who would have thought that Lu Yi, who had embarked on the path of cultivation, would become so powerful in just a few years? The 2 brothers were not able to join any sect because of their lack of aptitude. They were placed here by the Haotian Alliance to live and were destined to be mediocre for the rest of their lives. Everyone has their own fate. What's the point of thinking so much? Although a few years would not erase a person's edges and corners, the 2 brothers had also accepted the reality that they did not have much aptitude for cultivation. It was just that when they suddenly saw Lu Yi today, they were a little shocked and emotional. Yes, everyone has their own fate. Thinking back to when Lu Yi saved them, he did not seem to recognize them at all. He had probably forgotten about them long ago. After all, from the moment they embarked on the path of cultivation, the two sides were destined to have different fates. Chapter 856. Following the direction of the source of the flood, Lu Yi continued forward. With the support of his wings of flight and wind travel, his speed was pushed to the limit. Finally, he saw the source of the flood in the distance. It was a large river, but there was a gap in a certain section of the embankment, from which a large amount of water was gushing out. Lu Yi arrived at the gap in a flash, the fiery red wings on his back slowly retracting. After a glance, he immediately took out a formation flag. This gap was not small, and the river water was surging fiercely. He alone could not stop it. If he wanted to block this gap, he would have to borrow the power of a formation. This was not a difficult task for him. His storage space was equipped with all kinds of formation flags all year round. As he urged his spirit power, formation flags shot out one after another, like nails embedded in the gap. The many formation flags resonated with each other, quickly outlining the formation's shape. His spirit power continued to be urged, and in the center of the formation, there was a core spirit pattern. It quickly grew out. It was the defensive spirit pattern. With the defensive spirit pattern as the core of the formation, the defensive formation constructed was extremely sturdy. It naturally had no problem replacing the embankment to block the flood. However, the current environment was not suitable for the formation to be maintained for long periods of time. This was because Lu Yi had constructed the formation in the air, and the power to maintain it came from his spirit power. If he stopped, the formation would not be able to maintain it for long. Unless there was a suitable place to place spirit stones, he could borrow the power of spirit stones to replace his own spirit power. But how could there be a place to place spirit stones in a formation set up in the air? This was not a big problem. All he needed was this little bit of time. When the time came, regardless of whether anyone from the Clear Spring sect came to help, he would be able to find a way to plug the gap again. At that time, the flood would be eliminated. Everything was proceeding smoothly, but just as the defensive spirit pattern was about to take shape, something like a long whip suddenly swept out from the torrential flood, rolling straight towards Lu Yi. The flood surged and waves surged. Even with Lu Ye's powerful mind, he did not detect the other party's attack. In the face of such an attack, Lu Ye's first reaction was not to block or dodge, but to madly urge his spirit power and pour it into the newly formed formation. In the next moment, something tightened around his waist, and the long whip-like thing had already wrapped around him. He, who was hurriedly chasing after them on Hupa, saw Lu Yi being dragged into the water by something from afar. She immediately cried out in alarm, "Lu Yi!" Hupo's figure also abruptly sped up, but by the time it rushed to the place where Lu Yi had disappeared, there was no longer any trace of her. There was only a huge disappearing wave. Hupa growled, and Yi dived into the water to search for Lu Yi. The situation underwater was extremely complicated. Although she had fallen into the water almost at the same time as Lu Yi, when she reached the bottom, she did not see any trace of Lu Yi at all. For a moment, she was burning with anxiety. At this moment, a violent spiritual energy fluctuation came from a certain direction. She turned her head and saw a scarlet light. That was Lu Ye's blade light. Overjoyed, he hurriedly snuck over. Even before arriving, Yang Kai could sense that Lu Yi was fighting with some kind of enemy, and from the aura emanating from the other party, it didn't seem to be a human but more like a monster beast. He suddenly realized that the flood this time wasn't a natural disaster, but a monster beast causing trouble. In the 9 provinces, there were many monsters. Some monsters' beasts had gained intelligence and were proficient in human nature. They knew that cultivators were not to be trifled with, so they didn't dare to break the law to avoid being targeted by cultivators. However, some monsters' beasts were different. Their intelligence was muddled and they still retained their most primitive instincts, so how could they know what cultivators were? That was why there were cultivators patrolling the territory of every sect, mainly to guard against monsters' beasts that had achieved success in their cultivation. This time, it was clearly a water monster. It had destroyed the dam here, resulting in today's flood. Lu Yi had come to seal the gap and was directly targeted by it. He was nervous because it was hard to tell how strong these monsters' beasts without intelligence were. Some were strong, while others were weak. If they encountered a powerful monster beast in this kind of underwater environment, Lu Yi might not be its opponent. Just as she was thinking this, the scarlet blade light disappeared, and she saw Lu Ye's blurry figure rushing up. He was delighted, knowing that Lu Yi had dealt with the monster beast, and hurriedly rushed out. When she came out of the water, she saw Lu Yi standing in the air, holding a monster beast that looked like a monkey in his hand. However, it was different from ordinary monkeys. This monster beast had smooth fur, an extremely long tail, and dense fangs at the side of its mouth. It had a ferocious look. However, this ferocious look had already turned into a dead one. A piercing wound was clearly visible on its body, and blood was flowing down its fur. Lu Yi casually tossed the monster to Hu Po, who was beside him. Monster beasts at the monster general level had monster cores. This water monkey-like monster general was actually quite strong. If it was an ordinary Cloud River 9th Order cultivator, they might not be able to deal with it in such a short time. A battle would be inevitable. After all, they were underwater. Even if a cultivator was underwater, their strength would be greatly reduced. Thinking back to the battle just now, Lu Yi clearly felt that it was difficult to use his full strength. It seemed that there was a treasure in the War Merit Pavilion that he had to save up some War Merit to buy. Otherwise, if he encountered a similar situation in the future, he would not be able to use his full strength. The opponent he encountered this time was not strong enough, and he would definitely be at a disadvantage. As this thought flashed through his mind, Lu Yi hurriedly rushed towards the spirit array he had set up. The clouds moved, and the spirit energy human array could not be maintained for a short period of time. However, if the people of the Winter Wooling District were strong enough to maintain the spirit array, it would definitely collapse. At that time, all his previous efforts would be in vain. At this time, the spirit energy array finally stabilized. The spirit array had cut off the source of the flood. It could be controlled. Although some mortals had been lost, there would not be a big problem in the future. At the very least, the small city that Lu Yi saw before would not be submerged. After Baby Fragrance, a yuan, swept over from the zeroed H day. Her aura was strong, and she was obviously at the true Yen Lake realm. She was probably a Clear Spring sect cultivator who had received a message from a disciple and rushed over to investigate the situation. When he saw the scene on Lu Ye's side from afar, he could not help but be surprised. When he landed in front of the building, he was even more surprised, a spirit array in the air. What shocked him even more was that the spirit energy fluctuations coming from Lu Yi were obviously only at the 9th Order Cloud River realm, far from the true lake realm. Such cultivation and such attainments in the spirit array Dao were simply beyond imagination. He could also see that it was this spirit array that had turned into a barrier to prevent the spread of the flood. However, the current situation did not solve the root of the problem. He had to find a way to seal the gap in the dam. Clear Spring Sect's Yuan Cho greets this junior brother. Many thanks for junior brother's help. May I ask which sect junior brother is from? With his age and cultivation, it was naturally no problem for him to call Lu Yi junior brother. He probably asked this question because he felt that Lu Yi was from a top sect. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to have such attainments in the spirit array Dao at such a low cultivation. Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi. Jade Blood Sect. Yuan Cho raised his eyebrows, looking a little surprised. So it's junior brother Lu. Seeing that he seemed to want to say something, Lu Yi hurriedly interrupted. Senior brother Yuan, please find a way to seal this gap. Only then did Yuan Cho react and said apologetically, Junior brother, please wait a moment. Saying so, he hurriedly rushed off into the distance. When he returned, he kept taking out a large number of stones and sinking them into the water. After repeating this several times, the situation at the gap finally stabilized. When he returned for the last time, Lu Yi was nowhere to be seen. Looking up, he could only see a stream of light quickly disappearing at the end of his field of vision. Jade Blood Sect really did accept a good seedling. Yuan Cho was deep in thought. Back when Lu Yi joined the Jade Blood Sect and left his name in the sect, Yuan Cho naturally heard about it. It was also at that time that he learnt of Lu Ye's name. However, to a true lake-stage cultivator like him, Lu Yi back then wasn't worth much attention. In just a few years, Lu Yi had reached the 9th Order Cloud River realm and was about to break through to the true lake realm. Moreover, he had such attainments in the Spirit Array Dao that Yuan Cho could not help but feel envious. Sure enough, good seedlings were all from other sections. Figures rushed over from afar and landed beside Yuan Cho, cupping their fists and saluting him. Some called him martial uncle, while others called him senior brother. They were all cultivators of the Clear Spring sect who had rushed here after receiving the news. If Lu Yi could think of blocking the flood at the source, they could naturally think of it as well. However, Yuan Cho's cultivation was the highest, so he was the first to arrive. Senior brother, who set up this spirit array? A cultivator who was about the same age as Yuan Cho asked with surprise. In his impression, this senior brother Yuan of his didn't know anything about the Tao of formations, so it was utterly impossible to execute such a method of forming a formation in midair without an extremely high attainment in the Tao of formations. It was set up by a junior brother called Lu Yi from the Jade Blood Sect. He helped us a lot this time. Yuan Cho explained casually, this spirit array won't last long. Let's seal the gap first. Although he had taken a lot of big stones just now and barely managed to maintain the rapids in the gap, there was still a gap between the big stones, so it was necessary to seal it completely. A group of cultivators got to work and quickly dealt with the problem here. The spirit array left by Lu Yi also collapsed. Senior brother, look. The cultivator who spoke just now suddenly picked up a tattered corpse from the side and walked over to Yuan Cho. Yuan Cho took a closer look and saw that it was a monster general-level water monster. It had been killed not long ago and its monster core had been taken away. Is this water monster causing trouble? Yuan Cho suddenly realized. He was wondering why there was suddenly a problem with the dam here. The Clear Spring sect had disciples patrolling the area every day, especially the big river dams that passed by here. The disciples were especially careful in their inspection, fearing that a sudden burst would affect the mortals under their rule. Logically speaking, something like this should not have happened. It was not until he saw this water monster that Yuan Cho understood. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.